new things on the horizon. Do we have any questions maybe anybody in the audience would like to pose to any of the panel as far as some information or something? If you would, go ahead and give your name and affiliation since we're recording so forth, if you don't mind, please.
Stephanie Sturgis, I'm just here to observe and learn. What sort of information do you think will be gleaned from the overhead cameras that you can utilize acre by acre, plant by plant?
Okay, last year we really were looking at this, every year is different. Last year our wheat crop was really far along at this time. In fact, it was probably about that tall. This year it's about this tall. The reason for that was because last year was extremely dry and we applied nitrogen to our corn, and that corn crop didn't materialize. So there was a lot of nitrogen left in the soils. And so in places our wheat had ample amount of nitrogen, and other places it had a deficiency. So if we had an unmanned aircraft, we could fly it over that field and it would take pictures and it would examine the chlorophyll, the different colors of the green in the wheat, and we would have been able to make a better decision on how to apply our nitrogen. Now, we didn't have that technology last year, so we just pretty well went out there and applied the nitrogen that we thought we needed. And if anybody drove down Highway 54 in between Dresden and Paris, they saw most of my wheat was on the ground. And the reason that it was on the ground was because we had too much nitrogen there. It made it get too tall and it laid it down. We still wound up and made a good wheat crop, but we could have saved quite a bit of money on that nitrogen application if we'd had that.
Is that a specific camera that you would utilize for that, or can you change the cameras out in your drone?
Yes, and that's some of the things that we're doing at University of Tennessee Martin. You can use visible cameras, kind of like the camera that's recording us today, to see certain things, but when you start to use infrared and near-infrared cameras, you can actually see things within these corn, wheat, soybean plants that you can't see with the naked eye, and that's some of the things that we're doing. We're looking at different nitrogen levels across the field and trying to determine what those differences are, and so that's where we get into some of the calibration and things that I was talking about earlier.
Do you foresee only farmers owning their individual cameras, or a company coming in with a camera and leasing it out to this farmer and then that farmer and sharing that information with them?
Yeah, I think it can go both ways. If the farmer has the means to purchase that equipment, especially some of these cameras can be pretty expensive, although you can actually buy a system for a few $1,000s as well with a visible camera. So it kind of runs the whole gamut. I can actually see companies forming that would do this as a service for the farmer and giving an analysis.
Thank you.
Let me bring, if you don't mind, Dr. Smart, that had a little experience with this last year, some things as far as the department. Could you maybe share some thoughts? And I also would like for you maybe expand on natural resources. When we talk about agriculture, natural resources is something that everybody hear about too. Could you maybe give us a couple other follow-ups on the uses?
Right, just like they were talking about. By the way, I'm Philip Smart from UT Martin. What is great is being able to use a system like this to fly over your field and get what's called actionable data, something I can see that I can do something about. And one of the things we were working with last year, we've got a couple of different camera systems, and we're trying to come up with what is the best way to see this. And also, we're worried about expense, because I'll tell you, one camera cost about $16,000. And so most producers probably aren't going to want to spend that much money, but can we use a system that's a lot less and still be able to get that information? So looking at different systems, we had some issues too with the quality of the image. I think we have figured out what some of the problems were as far as blurriness and just simple having better mounts on the aircraft itself will fix that. As far as moving forward in natural resources, the industry that I think might benefit real quickly would be like forestry, because a lot of the same issues that you face in agriculture, you face in forestry. In other parts of the world, they use it for wildlife as far as monitoring populations, especially at-risk populations that are difficult to see and get to. I was at a meeting just earlier this week, and we were talking about the ability to use a system like this to deliver seeds into an area that might be sensitive. You wouldn't want to drive equipment in and use this to fly over it and drop seeds in a sensitive area. So we're very early on, and I've got to be honest, I'm very excited about it because I see a lot of potential, So what we're trying to do is just kind of take a stepwise approach as we move forward, and I think agriculture is a very logical beginning place, and what works and what doesn't work. And I think one of the things UT Martin can do is we can do some of the tests that maybe somebody doesn't want to spend the money to do.
One of the things that I've always kind of thought about in the what-if situation in the past year when they had one of the wildfires and it caught a bunch of the firefighters, and lost a lot of lives. If that had been monitored from the air, at that time, they could have noticed that probably and given a warning. So think about things like that. An aircraft could be positioned over a wildfire, left in place for the duration of that, as long as the fuel was there, and replace them, and you got a continuous monitoring, and it's a lot of safety. And I know a lot of the public says, invasion of privacy, yada, those type of things, but think of the good things that come out of it in that sense. What about other questions? Yes, sir.
Carl Schultz, 1049 KYTN and 1057 WQAK radio here in Union City. Being I asked this question, what about the technology and the scientific means of the seed itself? How has that changed your operations, your organization, and the yield itself?
We recognize that the population is growing at an extremely fast pace, but we also recognize that the amount of land that we can farm is not growing. In fact, it's decreasing. So it's important that we have the technology in place so that we can produce higher yields, we can have bigger, more productive calf crops, hog operations are looking for larger litters. We're trying to do a whole lot more with little, and that because that's what we're faced with. We have a lot fewer natural resources to do this with, and so we're very dependent on companies like Monsanto and DuPont, who are constantly bringing new ideas to the table. Our yields are increasing. The past 3 years before this, we had dry conditions, and it's hard to pace yourself on a dry year. They say that the technology that's there, that we were making better yields than we would have if we were using the old genetics. I can't argue with that. I don't know. We were making pretty poor yields when it was really dry. But this past year was a great year for to see improvement, and we made some of the highest corn yields that we've ever made. Soybean yields was the same way. In fact, all across our farm, we had the highest yield of corn, soybeans, and wheat that we've ever had. And I think that that's a direct result of the research that's been put into the genetics that we have today, whether that's corn, soybeans, or wheat.
And how important is irrigation now? You see irrigation systems cropping up more and more, and I think you're using them there now at UT Martin. How is that helping the operation?
Well, as I said earlier, every year is different. Last year, coming out of 2012, irrigation systems were really easy to sell because we didn't have any rain in 2012. This past year, we had plenty of rain. In fact, we had too much rain in some places. And so this year, the trend is going to tiling. In fact, we're putting in some tile. We didn't put any irrigation in. I'm not saying that we won't in the future, but we probably will. But we're going to tile our ground, which is you lay a drainage tile underneath the soil, and it will drain the soil better. So it just depends on the year as to what's necessary. I've heard that about 9 years out of 10, irrigation will always pay. So we probably just had that 1 year last year.
Some people think of the amount of rain that you get during the year. You can have a lot of rain in a year and have a very poor crop if you didn't get the rain at the right time.
Right.
And so it's when you get that and how much you deliver at a time, and the excess can hurt just as much as the not having enough. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Lieutenant Colonel Eric Solsky, Tennessee Army National Guard. I have the privilege of serving at the discretion of Major General Max Hastings, the Adjutant General. In saying so, I serve on a committee, the Governor's Council for Special Committees, one of those is unemployment, specifically for veterans. So with that said, it's really a two-part question, if I may. Do you see veterans bringing an applicable skill set to this technology? And the second part of that is do you see this as a lucrative market to draw veterans to these community areas and these agricultural markets versus a metro where there seems to be a density of need? We want to get these people out to the areas where they serve, where they have served in their hometown community. So two-part questions there, the technology, of course, and then the economic development, bringing veterans back to the community.
Sure. Jerry, you want to start off with that?
I'll give her a whirl. One of the things that I think people need to recognize is that 40% of those who serve in America's military come from rural areas like Weakley County, Crockett County, Obion County, those areas. 40%. They're a great capability because I'll always remember being on the top of Haditha Dam in western Iraq and watching a convoy of Humvees with Marines, and it come back within the compound, and watching them operate against the threat, and being able in those vehicles to coordinate GPS, to coordinate movement of the vehicles, to know through their own situational awareness and all the systems they had of where the bad guys most likely were, and then when they got hit, to be able to orchestrate a variety of systems to come against that particular threat. And when I look at the farms today, and we've heard Ben talk about it, we know that we've got sensors and mapping that gives us an idea of what's going on. And think about those veterans, 1 million of them. That means 40%, 400,000 are going to be coming back in the next 5 years, hopefully to the rural areas. They need jobs that are equal to their skills and talents. And what we're talking about here, operating those systems, those tractors, being able to take prescription programs that you need based on history of harvest, on the soil that being talked about, on the mapping from GPS capability, manipulate that data and come up with a program that will vary the rate of seed, spray, or whatever. And also to operate these UAVs, UASs, and identify, you got a certain period of time to combat pigweeds. And so with these systems, you can identify weed infestations or insect infestations or stresses on the plant that we've heard Dr. Winters talk about, and bring resources against them. Not too much resources. It's like, Little Red Riding Hood or whatever, just the right amount. Not too little, not too much, in order to kill the weeds, to kill the insects, to grow and relieve the stress on the plant. So I think we have got an excellent opportunity here, and our organization, Crockett Policy Institute, has a signature program we call Soldier to Civilian, where we are trying to assist those military veterans that are coming back, men and women, to find jobs that will allow them to have good paying jobs, as well as jobs that provide them the challenge that they need to continue to meet.
And I'd like to add to that, in addition, we at the University of Tennessee Martin, welcomes those veterans to come in, and if they need, they've already got some very good training, and we know that they make very good students, and we welcome them into our program to get up to date on these applications in agriculture, and we'll make sure that they get a good training, and we'll help them get jobs when they get out.
I think the governor's initiative that was in his State of the State address, his budget, about the tuition assistance, in the community colleges, the programs that we're talking about, some of this we need, and we at UT Martin, I know, has tried to work with some of the community colleges and get them involved on a 2-year level. So if this does get it in place, actually, then that'd be a great way, I think, to take some of the returning veterans into the 2-year programs at no cost, and then move them up to the 4-year program. So I think it takes a lot of people involved in it, and not just, a particular four-year institution to do that. Brad, from a economic standpoint, as far as the rural economy, manpower, unemployment rates and so forth, what could you add to this to follow up about how to get these people back in the workforce and so forth, and what assistance is out there for it?
Sure. I think one of the main things that I'm most passionate about is rural economic development. And, rural America is shrinking. Our voice is shrinking. The 8th Congressional District itself that we're in now, at one time was over 50% rural. Now that percentage is right at about 39%. It's happened even within our own place where we live, where we consider ourselves rural and rural in Congress, but in fact, there are only 50%. I mean, there are 34 districts with over 50% rural population in Congress out of 435, 34. So, I think that, I say that to say this, it's of utmost importance that we have strong voices representing us in rural America and with rural issues. I think that you can see that just for it took 2 years to pass a long-stalled farm bill. And, we need that strong leadership role, for rural America. The rural economy is not great. National unemployment right now is at 6.5. Tennessee state is at 7.3. The average of the counties throughout West Tennessee is still in double digits. It's right around probably 10.8% if you take an average of those counties together. All of the top 10 counties that are in highest unemployment, most all of those are in West Tennessee. So we are still hurting here, and there is a need to address unemployment. Those low-skilled jobs that were once prevalent here in West Tennessee, they're not here anymore. They're not coming back either. So it's important that we have that skilled, trained workforce for when companies come looking, that we have a workforce that's ready to go to work. And that includes ag-related jobs too. Rural areas lag behind in those workforce skills, and education and training is the only answer. You can look back. It used to take a team of folks to build a car, and now it takes one person running a computer. You can see the same thing on the farm too. You need less labor, but that labor that you have needs to be skilled. Just like Ben addressed. And, now is the time for that major investment in our human capital and our workforce skills here in rural America. And I think that UT Martin is doing a great job. Our technical schools around here in West Tennessee are doing a good job. We just need to be getting those folks in the door and getting them trained.
You talk about the unemployment, and you mentioned we're going to have all these people coming back, Well, something's got to give here. We've got to do something to make an opportunity for them, and we're bringing in a base of a labor force that's already skilled. They've got management experience. You say you need management, on the farm. We've got people coming in. Now how do we get these folks positioned to move into agriculture, because they're not all agriculturists, okay? And they probably never even think about going into agriculture for a job. Okay, how do we get them? I go back to a lot of other things we talk about. How do we get the information out there to them on that? Todd, you've got quite a diverse background as compared to some of us about the locations, starting in Washington. And as you have traveled around, what do you see it's different, or what do you see some things we probably need to be doing here a little bit different maybe? What can you share that kind of wrap up what we're talking about here?
Yeah, you're right, Dr. Gresham. Farming is very different out in the West Coast and the Pacific Northwest from where I'm from. I moved to the Midwest in 1983, Indiana, and I'd never seen a soybean plant. And interestingly, since then, most of my research has been done in soybeans. So that is a major difference. I think it's just one word that kind of brings all of us together, and it's already been brought up, is water. It's the biggest issue for farmers, whether you're